Good morning and welcome to Washington Profiles. I am your host today, Matt Bryant. Community Profiles kind of touches on subjects in and around Washington and some of the newsmakers and events and all those kind of things that are happening. And we are sponsored by KCTC. So I want to make sure I give them a big shout out because none of this is possible without some help from them and our other sponsors. But today's newsmaker, and literally a book writer, is Dan Henderson. So Dan has been here a few times talking about a variety of topics, but today he is talking about his new book, Rhythm and Pep, the Vaudeville Career of the Pearson Brothers. And I'm going to let Dan tell the story, but it's a fascinating story about some folks in Iowa that you may or may not have probably not heard about. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
Fair to say.
They're probably the most famous Iowans that nobody's ever heard of.
There you go. There you go. So, and there's a family connection in there, and I'll let you get into all that. But for now, Dan, tell us a little bit about the book, how it came to be. You know, I know, like I said, you've written a couple of other books, but how'd you become an author after all your career? So,
well, that's a good question. How did this all start? This is kind of my retirement career, you might say. I taught history for a long time, 3 decades. Did some consulting work, educational consulting work after that, and then in 2022, I retired right after COVID, and good time to retire, I think.
Right.
And I had already decided I wanted to write because I enjoy writing. And so, yeah, I've already published 3 other books. This is my 4th.
Okay.
And this one's quite different, though, than some of the earlier ones.
I was going to say some of from what I remember about some of your other books, they have different topics. This is
a deep dive
they're
a little
history,
bit more controversial, a little bit more philosophical sometimes.
Sure.
Religious nature.
Yep.
This is more of a historical narrative. And from my interest in history, and one of the books I wrote, by the way, was a family history called The Henderson Story, Tall Tree with Deep Roots.
There you go.
And so that was the first book I actually published. But within that book, I had mentioned the Pearson Brothers.
Sure.
And the way I know about the Pearson Brothers, and let me just tell you a quick family story.
Sure.
The Pearson brothers were born and raised in Clarinda, Iowa. They were born in the 1890s.
Okay.
And their father, who happened to be my great-grandfather,
Sure.
okay, because the Pearson brothers were brothers to my grandmother. So if you catch all that.
There's a few moving pieces, but I think we got
moving pieces of family history there. But my great-grandfather owned coal mines in the Clarinda area. And back in the 1890s, early 1900s, everybody, that's what you used.
Yep.
You didn't turn on a furnace, you put coal in the furnace.
And southern Iowa and Iowa in general was big coal production.
Big coal production area.
Yep.
A lot of people don't know that.
Yep.
But at any rate, his 2 sons, Earl and Carl, who are the subject of this book, grew up and as teenage boys worked in the mines.
Decided they didn't like that very much.
And especially the older brother, his name was Earl, he decided right away, this is not for me, I want to do something else. He went out and he joined a medicine show and he joined another company. Nothing really worked out too well.
Right.
I won't go into all the details. But he decided that he needed a dance partner. He was putting together an acrobatic dancing routine with comedy, music, the whole works.
So he wanted to go out on his own.
Pardon?
He wanted to go out on his own.
He wanted to go out on his own. So he went back to the mines and talked his little brother, Carl, into joining him. And it took some convincing. But they finally decided to do this. And they practiced in a barn near Shenandoah, Iowa, if you know where Shenandoah is.
Southwest.
And they got the Opera House in Essex, Iowa, to let them perform for the first time. They debuted their act. I think the year was 1915.
Wow.
So it was during World War I.
Sure.
And they were a hit. They filled the house 3 nights in a row. Well, from there, they were picked up by a tent theater company. And during that travel, Earl met his wife. Her name was Cleo Newport, who was also part of this story. So she plays a big part in it. But at any rate, I'll kind of go back here and tell you how I came upon this story. From there, they just go to the heights of success.
Sure. Sure.
on Broadway, and
Oh, wow.
on
Even Broadway. Okay.
yeah, on the Orpheum circuit, theater circuit. Get to that in a minute. But the reason I found out about this story is that my grandmother inherited Earl's scrapbook. Earl kept a scrapbook of all of his career during the time they were performing, which was really about a 30-year period.
Wow.
And it was filled with reviews. It was filled with letters and pictures and contracts from the Orpheum circuit. And it was fascinating. I knew about it as a kid. I didn't pay much attention at that time.
Right.
But my grandmother passed away in 1981. She had given it to her daughter, which is my aunt, who kept it. And she knew I was interested in history. So by the time I was old enough to understand that this was an important story,
Right.
just before she died in 2019, she gave it to me and said, "Here, do something with this." And I knew what the story was, but I didn't know the details.
Right.
So I took the scrapbook and I promised her I would do something with it. And this is it.
Here we are.
This is what I did.
And now it's documented in an easier to digest format.
Yeah,
So.
the scrapbook is over 100 years old.
Sure.
So I've had to kind of very carefully take it apart and archive it in sleeves and protective coverings
Sure.
so that it doesn't deteriorate. I don't know what I'm going to do with it
Right.
now, but at least it's protected.
Sure.
But at any rate, I had to do a lot of research because the scrapbook left big holes in terms of what their career trajectory was.
Right.
And it ended up, I had to travel. I traveled to Clarinda. I traveled to places like Branson, Missouri. I traveled to Newton, Iowa, museums and libraries. And I found a ton more information about them. They were everywhere.
Right.
And so I gathered all of that information and kind of created a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is, by 1918, they were already performing in Midwest circuits, which in those days, entertainers traveled. They didn't.
And they weren't traveling in luxury tour buses either.
No, they
right?
were all on trains in
Right.
those days, and it was rough traveling. But they traveled, but in 1918, they felt they were ready for what was called the big time. Well, big time meant vaudeville.
Right.
Now, the other purpose of this book is a lot of people today, if you mention vaudeville, they say, "Well, what is that?"
Right. Right.
Don't even know what's vaudeville. Now, our grandparents and our great-grandparents knew it well
Absolutely.
because anyone in the early 1900s up through the 1920s, if you wanted to be entertained, you went to the vaudeville show.
Sure.
And opera houses, like even here in town at the State Theater, that was an opera house at one time. They would do vaudeville, even alongside films.
Oh,
Right. Even the silent films might be featured, but there would be vaudeville entertainment with it.
Okay.
So that was the way you made it big. And vaudeville was the most popular entertainment venue from about 1880 up to about 1930.
Okay.
By 1930, of course, talking movies had
Right.
appeared, and radio.
Right.
Those two technologies kind of
Killed the vaudeville
killed the
star.
vaudeville. But if you think about vaudeville, and what is vaudeville? Well, it's a series of unrelated acts, usually involving comedy, music, acrobatics, animal acts.
Variety show.
It's variety. It's
Sure.
pure variety. So, we grew up, maybe, if you remember, at least I did, with things like the Red Skelton Show and Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In.
Yep.
and
Absolutely.
those were all vaudeville formats.
Right.
Because they would do these series of sketches and acts that were unrelated.
Right.
But they were fun. They were entertaining.
Sure.
And that's how our grandparents and great-grandparents' generations found entertainment. Well, the Pearsons went to Chicago in 1918 and tried out on what was called the Orpheum Circuit. Now, the Orpheum Circuit was the largest chain. You can think of it as a chain of theaters under common management.
Okay.
And if you made it on the Orpheum circuit, you were in the big time.
Okay.
It meant bigger salaries. It meant a guaranteed X number of weeks. I think their first contract was 65 weeks
Oh, wow.
of week to week going to different towns all over the United States and performing their act
In the Orpheum Theater.
in Orpheum theaters. And there were other circuits too. There were many others besides the Orpheum, but the Orpheum was really the big one. In fact, if there was an Orpheum theater in Cedar Rapids,
Okay.
they performed there. They performed in Des Moines. They performed in Sioux City. They performed Dubuque, and then coast to coast. So from about 1919 until 1928, it was like a 10-year stretch of nonstop performance.
Right, right.
So what I do
Still better than the coal mine.
Yeah, much better. Now, by the way, in the coal mine, the Pearson coal mines paid $50. I think it was $50 a month.
Okay.
By the time these guys the Pearsons hit their stride in performance in theater, they were making $500 a performance,
Wow.
which in the 1920s,
It's not an insignificant amount of money.
it's about $8,000 a night.
Wow.
I mean, so that's how you sort of judged.
Right,
Now, there were performers who made more than that sometimes.
right.
So they weren't what I would call the top tier, but they weren't the bottom tier. They
Right.
were probably in the mid to upper middle
You're right.
tier.
They were making a good living either way.
They made a very good living. Now, the sad part of this is I won't go into the details, but what happened to all that money, no one knows.
It didn't pass down.
No, it didn't. All I got was the scrapbook. I didn't get anything else. But anyway, they performed, and the I guess the status of their success came around 1920-21 when they hit what was called the Palace Theater in New York City. Now, the Palace Theater was built specifically by the Orpheum Company to house vaudeville entertainment. It was, and they called it a palace for a reason. It was the most ornate theater in the United States, and it was like the pinnacle of success. If you performed there, then you had made it.
Okay.
Well, from about 1920 and 1925, the Pearsons performed there 6 times.
Oh, wow.
They made it and performed. And, if you flopped on your first time,
You didn't come back.
you're not going to be asked
Right.
to come back. But they were a hit on the Orpheum and at the Palace. 1921, they performed in Washington, D.C. at a Orpheum Theater for President Wilson, who was an avid vaudeville fan.
Right.
He went to the Vaudeville Theater every Saturday night when he was president, if he could,
Right.
and then even after he retired. But so they performed for presidents. They performed at the Palace. They performed in L.A. to New York and everything in between. So that's why I say these guys became very, very famous, and they're probably the most famous Iowans that no one's ever heard of.
Right. Yeah. That's quite amazing. Quite a journey, right?
Yeah. Now the journey continues after 1930. There's some tragedy that happens, of course, in any good story. Like
Right.
there's a tragedy, there's conflict, there's comeback. I mean, and of course, you think about the Depression in the 1930s.
Right.
That was another reason vaudeville took a hit.
Right.
But they still performed.
So they still, even now, and again, I'm not going to have you give away your
No,
book
that's
here,
fine.
but they still perform a vaudeville style show,
Yes.
even after the death of vaudeville is too strong of a word, but
Yeah.
after it diminished.
The stock market crash happened in 1929. Now, they were already on their road back on a comeback trail, so to speak. But and then the market crash, and that just kind of finished off vaudeville. But there were still places where live performance was
Right.
invited.
But
And
they never translated to movies or anything. of
they
that
did
nature.
not, and that's probably why nobody knows about them.
Right.
I mean, if you take someone, for instance, like Cary Grant, Cary Grant and Fred Astaire, both were originally vaudeville performers.
Oh, wow. I did not know
Now, what they did successfully
that. With movies.
was transition into the movies.
Sure.
The Marx Brothers.
Okay. Yeah.
somebody like even Abbott and Costello and people like that. They were all vaudevillians,
Right.
but they made it in TV or movies.
Mm-hmm.
TV came later, but they made it in movies, so that's why we know their names today. You know, Burns and Allen were another one.
Okay.
But what I found in the scrapbook is I found playbills of their show and all the other entertainers on it. Well, they were performing with Houdini.
Oh.
They were performing with Burns and Allen, Jack Benny.
Wow.
They performed with, who else? Babe Ruth was actually on the vaudeville circuit because in the off season, he would go on the vaudeville and talk about his career. Of course, he drew people in.
Of course.
And he'd sing a little song, this little ditty about baseball, and,
Right.
you know, and he was a hit. But they were on the same bill with all of these famous
Wow.
people. But they never made the switch. They never made that transition to radio even or movies. Therefore, they kind of got lost.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, lots of measures of success there, from big paychecks to traveling the country to who they were performing with, and it's quite a resume.
Well, and that's why I wanted to do something with this story, partly because, you know, it's a family story.
Right.
The Pearson brothers were what I call my great uncles,
Mm-hmm.
and because they were brothers to my grandmother. But the other part of it is, just as an Iowan, you know, we think of a lot of people who came from Iowa who were celebrities,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was John Wayne, born in Winterset, or Andy Williams, and Glenn Miller was born in Clarinda.
Oh, okay.
In fact, they were probably contemporaries
Well,
with the Pearsons.
Who knew that Clarinda was a hotbed of entertainment in the era, right?
Yeah, well, I write a lot in the book about Clarinda
Uh-huh.
because I spent quite a bit of time there. And interestingly, Clarinda did have a very vibrant entertainment culture
Okay.
back in the early 1900s. And part of that had to do with the Chautauqua movement. I don't know if you're familiar with Chautauqua.
Only vaguely.
Okay, it's another one of those entertainment venues that a lot of people don't know about, kind of like vaudeville. But Chautauqua was a nationwide movement, and it brought entertainers in on an annual basis to various towns. Well, Clarinda was a big Chautauqua venue. They also had a couple, for a town that size, which is actually smaller than Washington.
Yeah, I do know at that time though, with the coal mines, I mean, the populations have shrunk considerably since those days.
But they had 2 opera houses.
Oh wow.
So I mean, and even a little town like Essex, Iowa, has 750 people.
Mm-hmm.
They have an opera house.
Right.
And by the way, I visited Essex, and that opera house, not a lot of them are still standing, but that one is, and it's been renovated.
Nice.
It's a beautiful, it's not big, but it's a beautiful house. They use it as a community center now.
Okay.
And I've got a section in the book about Essex, because that's where the Pearson brothers got their start, was in Essex, Iowa. But I've already done book talks in Clarinda and Shenandoah. I did that before Christmas.
All right.
And then I went out to Spokane, Washington over the holidays, but I did a book talk out there too.
Is that right?
Well, the Pearson brothers performed in Spokane twice.
Okay.
I mean, I've got every place they've ever been. I've documented where they went in a timeline, and it's actually in the appendix of the book. You'll find it. It's like 20 pages of, you know, day after day after day where they went. But they were in Spokane, so there was a book club there. They wanted me to come. So I mean, there's really a lot of interest in this story nationwide, not just in Iowa.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So I'm gonna pause here for just a second, take a break,
Sure.
and when we come back, tell us a little bit. I know you have a book tour coming up, and other places that we can find the book.
Sure.
And if there's any other loose ends we need to tie up, we can do that. So we will be back in just 1 minute.
In the heart of rural Iowa, where community matters most, the connections we make are made to last. Meet KCTC, your hometown internet, phone, and TV provider. At KCTC, we're not just about technology, we're about people. Our dedicated team are your neighbors, committed to bringing you top-tier services right where you live. We believe in giving back to the community that raised us. Experience the power of a real connection with KCTC. Join us in building a stronger, more connected Southeast Iowa.
At Seafirst Credit Union, we're all about making connections, like how we connect you to that dream vacation with a savings account designed to help get you on the flight there. Connect with Seafirst today and see why together is better.
The Connie and Amanda team is dedicated to giving back to our community by actively engaging with our clients, businesses, and the public. When it comes to helping you find your next home, investment, or commercial space, the Connie and Amanda team is here for you.
Bring the kids and share the memories at the 2026 Midwest Old Threshers Reunion. Experience the sights, sounds, and traditions of steam engines, antique cars and trucks, tractors, and more. First visit or a family tradition. Enjoy home-style food, the excitement of an Old West shootout, and nightly entertainment. For generations, this is where memories are made. Celebrate history and make new memories at the Midwest Old Threshers Reunion, September 3rd through 7th in Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Visit oldthreshers.com for more details.
At WCHC, our goal is to take great care of our patients and our staff.
We are able to approach you, take care of your issues, but also give you a path, as far as referrals or treating you right then and there.
Our role in the community is taking care of something that matters to everyone. It's their family and their health.
More than you expect for your health care.
Welcome back to Washington Community Profiles. We are visiting today with Dan Henderson, who has a new book out about his great uncles, the Pearsons. So we've had a good conversation up to this point, and there's a good tie-in kind of back to Iowa, right? That happened. So we'll let Dan take it back over and kind of finish up on some of those points.
Yeah. So I mentioned that the Pearsons are probably the most famous Iowans that no one's ever heard of. And so one of the goals I have is to get their story out and known. But I think one of the things that makes their story really important for Iowans is that even though the Pearson Brothers became nationwide successful entertainers, they always came back to Clarinda and to Iowa. The life of a vaudevillian usually went kind of like a school year. You were on the road from August or September to maybe May. And then the summer months were kind of down because in those days there was no air conditioning in these theaters.
Right.
So not too many theaters were booking shows, sitting in a hot theater with humidity. It just didn't work. So they would go home during the summer, spend time there. And that's important. I write a lot about that because a lot of entertainers that came from Iowa were born here, but they left usually in their childhood. That would be true of John Wayne, Johnny Carson, Glenn Miller. They were all born here, but they never came back. Right. So, and we honor them. There's a John Wayne museum in Winterset. There's a Glenn Miller one in Clarinda, and Andy Williams, another one. Okay. But these guys had such deep ties to Iowa, deep roots here, that they just came back every year. Now, eventually, the family moved up to Logan, Iowa. So if you know where Logan is, that's in Harrison County, just north of Council Bluffs.
Okay.
So I was born in Council Bluffs in the mid-'50s. And Earl was still alive. He was, at that point, retired, living in Logan. My grandmother was there, along with lots of other family members in that area. So we visited there constantly. Now, as a 4 or 5 year old kid, I don't remember if I ever met him.
Right.
I probably did, but I don't remember it. But it's interesting that they called Logan, Iowa home. That's where they're buried, both of them. And so I think Iowans need to appreciate at least that you got these two guys who really became famous entertainers nationwide.
Right.
They even made a trip to Europe, by the way, which I document in the book. But they were Iowans at heart,
right?
And came back. So I'll leave some of the details for readers to learn on their own. But it's an important part of the story. Is their Iowa connection?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So speaking of Iowa, you're doing an Iowa book tour. You're going to go around. I guess I don't know where yet, but around the state. And
Yeah, well, the book came out last November.
Okay.
It was published, and one of the very first places I went to do a book talk was Clarinda.
Sure.
Well, I actually did one here at the library before I left, and then early December I went to Clarinda. I went to Shenandoah, which is very close to Clarinda. Did book talks there. Local people were so happy to hear this story. Even a lot of people in Clarinda didn't know this story, which I was, on the one hand, disheartened to hear, but on the other hand, happy
that you could share
could share the story with them.
Absolutely.
And give them another point of pride, so to speak. Just like if we were in Washington and somebody famous appeared, and from our history. But over the holidays, I went out to Spokane, Washington, spend the holidays with my son and his family.
Okay.
But I did a book talk out there too. As I mentioned to you at the break, the Pearsons performed in Spokane. So it's almost like I can go to any major city in the United States
and have a connection.
Because in their timeline, which I've reconstructed their schedule, it's every city in the United States.
Wow.
Well, they were on the road for 10 years.
Right, yeah.
So almost nonstop, which if you think about it is pretty grueling.
Yeah, like I said earlier, not luxury tour buses.
No. Trains were just awful. But at any rate, I was out in Shenandoah, or Spokane, excuse me, and just got back a week ago. So now this is the first event kicking off this Iowa tour. I've got, over the next 3 or 4 months, I'll be going to about 15, 20 different towns in Iowa.
Nice.
And doing a book talk.
Okay.
Lined up mainly through libraries. Preston is coming up, Knoxville, Clinton, Des Moines, lots of places. But there are also bookstores. I'll be at Prairie Lights in Iowa City later on. Got some radio interviews in Des Moines that I'm doing, and
nice.
IPR. And
okay.
So my goal is simply to tell the story.
You bet.
And obviously I'm happy if people buy the book, but I want the story to get out there. So this is my way of trying to communicate a really fun, interesting Iowa story.
It is fascinating. So you mentioned buying the book. So I know there's a couple places locally. Where all can you buy the book?
Well, the book initially, it's on Amazon if you want to shop Amazon. A lot of people don't want to buy from Amazon, which I understand. So here locally, there are 2 places you can buy the book. Dodici Shop has not only this book, but my other books as well. So I've got my first 3 books are there. So if you go into Dodici Shop, right up to the right of the counter, there's a Dan Henderson section, which I'm very happy for.
Right.
And you can pick up the book there. And they're all signed. I've signed those copies.
Nice.
And you can also pick up the book at the Village. And my wife has a store there, so it was kind of an easy.
That's all right.
Easy one. But if you're interested, and then if you really want to, if you want to just borrow it, you can go to the library and they'll have a copy there. But yeah, and then you can also, if you want to find out more. And by the way, on my website, I'm in the process.
Your website, which is?
My website is danhendersonauthor.com.
Okay.
danhendersonauthor.com. I am in the process of posting the whole scrapbook. The scrapbook has close to 400 images.
Wow.
So it's going to take a while.
No small project.
It's not a small one. But if you want to really see, and you can find out more about this book and my other books there on the website and order them from there. But I think it's kind of fun to actually see the actual clippings that Earl Pearson kept. And again, they're over 100 years old now, so they're pretty worn.
Right.
Some of them are even hard to read because they're so soiled. But I think it's important for researcher, and that's, by the way, another audience for this is museums, schools, universities, colleges. I even had in the endorsement section a couple of professors one from University of Northern Iowa, one from Simpson College, I think another one, review the book ahead of time and give me an endorsement. So you'll see their names in there. So it's a book that I hope will contribute both academically and just culturally to the history of the state of Iowa.
And it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a fascinating story. I hope people will pick it up.
Okay. Well, Dan, thank you very much. Your book, Rhythm Pep, The Vaudeville Career of the Pearson Brothers. As we just talked about, you can buy it locally. You can buy it on Amazon. You can catch you on tour somewhere. I'm sure you're selling books when you're doing that as well.
Well, my schedule is on the website. So if you want to see where I'm going to be, there's an events section. You can just find me there.
Fantastic. So, well, thank you for coming in. We appreciate it. Fascinating story.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. And so we will sign off. Thank you for tuning in to Washington Community Profiles, and we will see you again next week.